At this point, it is now 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. The first piece of this is the administration of oaths.
If you three could raise your right hands and repeat after me. I state your name.
I,
Martin
Rebecca
Wright,
Butler,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and will faithfully, impartially, and lawfully
faithfully, impartially, and lawfully
carry out my duties
carry out my duties
as a member of the St. Joseph County Economic Development Commission.
as a member of the St. Joseph County Economic Development Commission.
Thank you.
The next order of business will be the election of officers. So at this point in time, we'd open the floor for nominations for president.
I nominate Terry Bush for president.
I second.
If there's no other nominations at this point in time, we'll close the floor and I'd ask for a motion. Or
Yeah, motion.
motion to.
Motion and second, so just
Yeah.
vote now.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Bonham, how do you vote?
In the affirmative.
Mr. Wright, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Bush, how do you vote?
Aye. Congratulations. It is now your meeting, or I can continue to do the election of officers.
I'd be delighted if you'd continue.
How many other officers do we need for this board?
Two more officers, the
Okay.
Vice President and the Secretary.
So I'd open up the floor for nominations for vice president. Are there any nominations for vice president?
I'd be delighted to nominate Rebecca June Bonham.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Wright, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Bush, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Ms. Bonham, how do you vote?
I,
Motion carries.
Not to take away from the suspense here, but any nominations for secretary?
I nominate Mr. Wright.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Bonham, how do you vote?
I,
Mr. Bush, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Wright, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you all for your service.
Very efficient.
Crumb-free. At this point in time, I'd turn to me, maybe we ought to do just a brief introduction, officer or staff and everybody in the room. I'm Bill Shelley. I'm the county's Executive Director of Economic Development.
Chris Brown, Economic Development Specialist, working under Bill.
Bill Garrett, counsel for this commission as well as the redevelopment commission.
And Phil Facenda, special counsel to the county on the financing.
Over at the monitor is Shelley Marker. Shelley is our admin du jour and covers all our different boards. And then Steve Dalton behind us is our financial advisor. At this point in time, I turn over to Chris for a brief introduction about the project.
Okay. So we are here this morning to start the final pieces of setting up an EDA and a TIP allocation area for Project Honeysuckle. And I just want to make sure that we introduce too, Darren Jacobs is virtual. He's with Lightsource BP, who is the developer of the project. So,
Morning.
So the project came to us. I'll give just a quick overview. It's probably been about a 2.5-year, almost 3-year period at this point. So RES was the initial developer that was looking at it fall of 21. RES sold this project and plus a couple other projects in their portfolio to Lightsource. Lightsource has carried the ball forward through a lot of the kind of negotiations on getting the EDA and the TIF and a development agreement in place for the project. We got the development agreement finished up in July of this year. You guys may have seen some of the news articles regarding some of those negotiations. So we're moving forward with that. The project is 150 megawatt solar farm to be located in Olive Township. The construction cost is about $165 million. They will be employing between 150 and 200 construction workers over kind of a 12 to 18 month timeline, looking to start construction this fall. So we're looking at power generation, I think early 2024 is the anticipated. when we were looking at incentive pieces to help the project along, there was a lot of back and forth. I think first ones was a tax abatement request. We felt there was a better way to do it, and there were some kind of landmines with tax abatements, especially related to solar farms on looking at how the land is assessed and things like that. So Steve, for the most part, was the mastermind of creating this kind of TIF schedule that would basically be taking TIF and then utilizing it to incentivize not only the company, but also some of the local taxpayers as well. And so in this document, you'll see, and it's all governed by the development agreement with LightSource, as the TIF revenue comes in, New Prairie United School Corporation will start getting checks kind of year one. So the RDC will, governed by the development agreement, be writing checks to the RDC. Second piece will be the underlying taxing units will see a bump in their tax revenue as well. So the redevelopment commission basically allows the base for the TIF to grow at 13.2%, something like that each year. So there'll be a bump there. And then the redevelopment commission in year 11 will start collecting money off of that revenue. Everything else is then utilized as kind of the incentive piece to lower the costs for LightSource. And so the remainder out of those buckets goes back to LightSource in a schedule that's kind of set forth in the development agreement. So that's the very broad overview of the project and why we utilize TIF. It's a single user. It will stay a single user throughout the life of the project, which is anticipated. At least the TIF will be 25 years. The project itself is expected 35 years. So at the end of the 25-year period, the property taxes will all be going into the underlying taxing units at that point. So that's kind of my brief overview. I don't know if I want to then introduce Phil to kind of go through the legal mechanisms of what we need to do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So the step for the Economic Development Commission in this incentive package is, as Chris mentioned, in order for the TIF revenues that are going to be generated by the newly created area to be used as incentive for the developer. The structure is an economic development revenue bond, which is a TIF bond. And those who have served on the commission, and I know that you have, would be used to the use of 36712, Indiana Code 36712, which is the code site that allows for the issuance of bonds by the county. This body has to review that issuance and recommend to the county council that the county council take action to issue these bonds. And you will recall that this body has handled that for not-for-profit entities in our community, et cetera. In this case, it is, and in those cases, it's not backed by TIF revenue. In this case, it is. So the payment of these bonds is entirely the TIF revenue generated from the project, and there's no independent pledge of any tax revenue or otherwise general obligation pledge or otherwise of the county. It's all based on the TIF revenues that are generated from the facility. And so as Chris mentioned, a new area is being set up. The project itself, investment of nearly $165 million. These bonds would be in an amount not to exceed $50 million. So it's not funding the entire project or it's a portion. Because of the nature of the project, there's only 3 to 5 new full-time jobs. You can imagine that with a solar farm, it doesn't require that much ongoing maintenance and labor. But as has been described in prior meetings and other media coverage of the project, there are numerous construction jobs that will be developed as a result of this. So what you will need to do today is adopt a resolution in which you approve the underlying bond documents, and those are a trust indenture, a financing agreement, and a bond purchase agreement. And we have those, and you've been provided those in substantially final form. Those documents will not go live until we actually close on this. The bond purchase agreement is anticipated to be executed in October. And the actual closing of the bonds will be as much as 12 months later. And the reason for that is to maximize the amount of TIF revenue. So the project will be largely underway, if not complete by the time the bonds are issued, which is a good thing for the county, because they'll note that the project is there and happening. So again, the resolution that's before you approves the bonds to be issued in the amount we talked about. We discussed it approves the form of these bond documents. As Chris mentioned, there will be other revenues that will flow to the taxing units that are part of the development agreement, and that is also referenced in these documents. Unless you have any other questions. The only other thing I should have said on the front end is that, and we'll go through this in the agenda, but public hearing is required as part of this meeting, and we provided notice, and your council has been provided with the newspaper notice from the Mishawaka Enterprise and the South Bend Tribune of this meeting. I don't know if there are any questions. I'll be happy to try to answer them, or Chris or Bill or Phil can answer them, or Mr. Dalton.
So I just have a curiosity. It says in the documentation, the 3 to 5 jobs. I think I read it correctly. It would be 40 to 70,000 in annual salaries. Was that a total amount, or is that a per person amount?
Annual total.
Annual total. Okay, thank you.
The only other question I have might be just procedural. Are we then looking to approve, adopt, recommend
Yeah, so
the resolution?
So you approve the, if you're so inclined, you approve the resolution today, and the resolution and the report. You execute the report, and you can do that as separate. I suppose you could go ahead and do that as two votes, one for the resolution, one for the report. Execute the report. The report gets provided to both your resolution and the report get provided to the county council. We also provide the results of this meeting to the Area Plan Commission, which is another statutory step that we have to provide them. They get some period of time to respond to your report if they're so inclined. And prior to, then procedurally, the county council will look at this a week from today. Yeah, a week from today. And then we will proceed towards, if the county council is so inclined to adopt it, they have a bond ordinance to adopt. And then we would proceed towards a closing on the bonds in October. I did want to just quickly highlight for you the packet that was included. We added a coverage paragraph, a couple of columns that show the TIF coverage, and it wasn't in the draft that was distributed to you. So Becky, I'll send that. You can see that we added that.
Phil, these are the.
Oh, you got it. Okay. Perfect. So just so you see that those are the analysis on the amount of coverage that there is, and essentially after the distributions that are detailed in the development agreement, as Chris mentioned, the remainder of the TIF proceeds would then flow to pay debt service on these bonds. And if it's not all paid, then it is only what it is. The county is not responsible for anything beyond that. Okay, so at this procedurally, I think what we should do now is open up if there aren't any other questions from the commission, we should open up a public hearing and see if any members of the public would like to speak on this. Does somebody want to open the public hearing? Oh, go ahead.
Yes, at this point, let's proceed with our public hearing. Yes, sir.
Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. Mr. Wright, thank you for the question about the $40,000 to $70,000 being total for each of the 3 to 5 people who are targeted to be the workforce there. I was under the assumption that that was the salary range of the 5 employees who were going to be working there. The 70,000 is, to me, is right about the range of I'd expect 1 employee to be paid. Obviously, these aren't full-time employees.
Darren, do you want to?
No, I think Dan is correct. I noted that too when Phil said that. I think that was the salary range that we expect for employees. So 40 to 70,000 or 40 to 75,000 per employee. For the most part, these are going to be individuals who are trained technicians. So these are solar technicians who will be doing electrical maintenance. So these will be trained individuals who will tend to have probably a higher wage range than someone just off the street. Now, part of the reason for the range in there also is some of this will also be maintenance. So some of those individuals that may be doing just general maintenance, repair, any mowing, anything like that, obviously is going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. But yeah, so we would anticipate that range of being 40 to 75,000 per employee and estimating 3 to 5 employees.
Thank you, Darren. One follow-up question. There had been some talk about using local livestock, sheep, to do the maintenance of the grass under the panels, whatever the growth is under the panels. Is that still a consideration?
Yes. So we have folks who sort of handle that on the environmental side, who have reached out to the Indiana Grazing Association and have actually taken a meeting with I won't say a local farmer, but a farmer somewhere in the area who would be interested in bringing in his herd of sheep, to graze. So yes, and we are planning with the plantings currently that we're looking at. They would be the type of plantings or the grass plantings that would both meet the county's pollinator requirement, but also be the type of vegetation that sheep would want to graze on and would be healthy for them. So we are not 100% set on it, but we are certainly moving towards that way to use sheep in at least a portion, if not all, of the project area to graze on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Caruso. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Deborah Durrell, 21677 Otten Road, South Bend. I am here to talk about remediating the land. One of the things that the public is becoming more concerned about every day is the quality of our land. And just because it's producing taxes doesn't mean that it's healthy land. And so a healthy economy requires a healthy environment, and a healthy community lives off of that environment. So one of the things that we're very much in favor of is the fact that Honeysuckle is essentially remediating some of the farmland over there that is probably depleted. And there are a lot of lands around the county who are qualified as brownfields. And so I'm here to advocate that tax abatements and TIF funds should increasingly be considered using to remediate some of these brownfields in some of the ways that our code enforcements are requiring private property owners to do these things. I think we should also be requiring businesses and industry and other developments to do the same thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other input? Thanks to you both.
There's no further input. Mr. President, you can close the public meeting.
Okay, at this point, I think we'll close the public meeting for today.
Okay. I think by separate votes, you could take up the resolution and then the report, and the report will be with the modification that was discussed on the floor. And Chris, I don't know whether before the commissioners leave, is it possible for you to rerun that with them? Yeah, just before they sign, they can vote
Just
on
the
it.
report.
It just, yeah, I can show you what the change will be.
You want to get, okay.
I want to mark the change.
Yeah, I've got it. Okay.
And that's relative to the per employee.
Yeah, it makes a difference per
Okay.
individual.
We'll get that modified, but you can go ahead and vote on it because we all know what the change is. So, go ahead.
If the first up for vote would be the resolution. We have a motion to approve the resolution.
I move that we approve the resolution.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Bonham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wright, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Bush, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Next, it would be appropriate for a motion to approve the report of the St. Joseph County Economic Development Commission as amended on the floor. We have a motion and a second.
I would be willing to move that we accept the amended report.
Second. After you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Bonham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wright, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Bush, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. If no additional business, so the next item on the agenda would be public comment. If anyone has any public comment, please address the commission. You have 3 minutes. Seeing none, Mr. President, the next step would be a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn our meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Bonham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wright
Aye.
and Mr. Bush.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
I have the resolutions